Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chela Gimel, and in Yirtzeh Hashem today we will be learning Daf Peiches Amid Beis. Now, having said that, today's page in the Dirshu schedule is Peiches Amid Beis. We really completed just about all the Mishnah Berurah on Peiches Amid Beis in the previous share. Today we're going to do about half of the Mishnah Berurah on Peites Amid Aleph, and we're going to do a nice piece of the Mechaber on Peites Amid Aleph as well. But again, today's page in the Dirshu schedule is Peiches Amid Beis. We're continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We're going to pick up today on Peiches Amid Beis, top line of the Mechaber, middle of the line, Avol Beged. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanasunim Batzara Bashivya, Ha'imdim Bein Bayom Ubein Bayabasha, Hamakim Yerachem Aleihem, V'yetzieh Mitzara L'Rvacha Me'afelu La'iro Mishibud L'Geula, Hashta Bagolo V'zman Kariv V'nemar Amen. Our learning should be a schus Refuah Shalema for Rachel Shava Basit L'Freda, Moshe Meir Ben Esther Fradl, Tzvi Ben Leah Miriam, Chava Adasa, Bas Rezel Serel, Tavara Bas Shoshabina, Rivka Bas Shira Leah, and Yitzchak ben Tzion ben Dusha. They should have Refuah Shalema B'Seich Shar Chayle Yisrael. Our learning should also be a schus. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over all of our brothers and sisters who find themselves in harm's way. B'chol Makom Shehem. So we're here in Siman Shin Beis. We're picking up in the middle of Sif Tes. Now we've been discussing the halachas that govern what you're allowed to do to clean a beged. We're dealing primarily with the av malacha of malabain, to whiten or to bleach a beged. We learned the Mishnah Berurah at length that malabain is the av malacha, to whiten a beged in the preparation of taking yarn, taking raw wool, raw linen, turning it into bolts of cloth, before you spin it into yarn and then weave it into fabric. First you have to whiten it. That's the av malacha of malabain. There is also a tolada of kibus. Laundering is a tolada of the av malacha of malabain. The tolada of kibus is also aser midaraisa. Both the av and the tolada are aser midaraisa. We're dealing primarily with this tolada of malabain, the Isser Malacha on Shabbos of Kibbutz, of laundering or washing garments. Now, in the beginning of Sif Tes, the Mechaber told us that if you have dirt on a shoe, you're allowed to go ahead and pour water onto the shoe. So you're allowed to rinse off the shoe on Shabbos. Why are you allowed to rinse it off? Because by leather, we do not say shriyasai zehu kibusai. We don't say that rinsing is akin to washing by leather. To take the shoe and actually, let's say, take two shoes, use water, and rub them against each other, that would be kibus mamish, and that would be an iser midaraisa even by shoes. But that's what the Mechaber told us in the beginning of Sif Tes. Now, on the top of Peiches Amid Beis, in the middle of the line, we are going to turn to a discussion of begadim, clothing and fabrics. Says the Mechaber, Avo beged sheyesh alav lichloch. Till now, we were talking about leather. We're speaking about shoes. Says the Mechaber, Avo beged, but a garment. Now, the word beged does not only mean a garment. The word beged over here is being used to describe anything that's made out of fabric. So in the context of this halacha, a towel would be called a beged. Just want you to realize that. People see the word beged, they think right away a suit, a tie, a shirt, a sweater. Beged over here means anything that's made out of fabric. So a towel, these halachas would apply very much to a towel, and we're going to see that as we go along. So says the Mechaber, Ava beged sheyesh alav lichluch, if you have something made out of fabric that has dirt on it, aser afilu l'shachshechai, you're not allowed to mamish launder it, but you're also not even allowed to pour water on it. Not only are you not allowed to pour water on it, that sounds like you're taking a pitcher and you're pouring water, you're not allowed to make it wet. So if you have something that's made out of fabric and it has dirt on it, you're not allowed to get it wet. No rubbing involved, no anything involved. You're just not allowed to get it wet. Why, says the Mechaber? Tezehu kibusai. Because when you wet a dirty piece of fabric, that in itself is an act of kibus. Why? Because when you have something absorbent, like fabric, and it has dirt on it, and now you get it wet, the water itself, the moisture itself, starts to separate the dirt and the stain from the fabric, and it starts to cause the dirt to lift off of the fabric. This is the rule that we learned about in the Mishnah Berurah's beautiful Hakdama, Shriyasai Zehu Kibusai. Shriyasai, soaking it, Zehu Kibusai, is part and parcel of laundering it. That's the halacha that the Mechaber is telling me here. Beged sheyesh alav lichloch, when you have fabric that has a stain, that is dirt, asar afilu l'shachshachai. You're not even allowed to rinse it. Tezehu kibusai, because that in itself is kibus. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cotton mem gimel lichloch. We're talking about a piece of fabric that has dirt on it. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you have to understand what we mean when we say that it has dirt on it. Afilu roik ba'alma, even if it only has some saliva on it. It only has some phlegm on it. We're not talking about a seriously dirty piece of beged, piece of fabric. Even if it's only a little bit soiled, it has some saliva on it. Also, the Mechaber said, l'shachshechai. Ois cut mem dalid. What does that mean? Also, l'shachshechai, pirish. Sha'asar litein alav mayim klal. You're not allowed to place any water on this piece of fabric. Vafilu muatim. Even a small amount of water. Why not? Because the Mechaber said, because dezehu kibusai. This is the laundering of the garment. Exposing it to water is already kibus. You don't have to do anything else. Says the Mishnah Berurah, cut mehei dezehu kibusai. What the Mechaber wants to say here is, beged, when it comes to fabric, shriyasai, soaking it, exposing it to water, zehu kibusai, that equals laundering it. Now I want to be clear. The word shriya means soaking. Shriyasai, soaking it, zehu kibusai equals kibus. Don't get confused. This does not mean that the only thing you're not allowed to do is fill up the sink with water or fill up a basin, take the fabric and put it in to soak. No. Putting any water, like the Mishnah Berurah said before, even exposing it to a very small amount of water, that's included in this rule of shriyasai zui kibusai. Just exposing it to water, that equals kibus. We're going to talk about even if you wash your hand and then dry your hand on a beged. So you're exposing the beged to the wetness on your hand. That is included in the rule of shriyasai zehu kibusai. So it doesn't mean, the word soaking should not be taken literally. Exposing fabric to water, zehu kibusai. Continues the Mishnah Berurah here on Peites Amud Aleph. The heavy bechlal melabein, therefore, exposing the fabric to water. And over here so far we're talking about dirty fabric, right? This is what the Mechaber said. Beged sheyesh alav lichluch. We're talking about a beged, we're talking about fabric that has dirt on it. It has a stain on it. It's not clean. By a beged that has lichluch on it, that is shriyasai zehu kibusai. When you expose it to water, that equals laundering it. The heavy bechlal melabein. Therefore, this goes under the av malacha of melabein, the chayiv, and this would be an iser daraisa. Masha enkein minol. Contrast this to a shoe that we started with in Siftes. After shaykh by kibus, even though the malacha of kibus can and does apply to a shoe made out of leather, mikamakam shriyasan einzu kibusan. But by leather, we do not say shriyasan zehu kibusan. We do not say that you're not allowed to expose the shoe to any water because that's kibus. El imkein mechabis mamish. By leather, in order for it to rise to the level of the Isser Malacha of Kibus, you have to actually do washing. You have to take it, you have to rub it together, but simply putting water on it would not be Kibus by leather, but it is Kibus by a beged. So now let's pause here for a second and just high level, let's just review what we just learned. If you have fabric and it has dirt on it, you have fabric that it has a stain and it has a stain on it, you cannot expose it to water, because even though I'm not doing any laundering, I'm just taking a little water and I'm putting a little water on it. That's an Isser Daraisa. Why? Because Shuriyasai Zui Kibusai. Exposing it to water, that already is Kibus, and that is Usser. So you're sitting by the Shabbos table and you get something spills on your tie. You get a little cholent on your tie. Could you do this? I'm releasing your finger. No. Shuriyasai Zui Kibusai. Could you take, grab something from the table? No. Shuriyasai Zui Kibusai. You're not allowed to do that. Shuriyasai Zui Kibusai. Now again, I want to be very clear. So far, the Mechaber is talking about beged that has dirt on it. Okay, let's go weiter in the Mechaber before we go to the Ramah. Let's finish off the Mechaber here. Bottom line of Peches Amid Beis, middle of the line. Ella, rather, what could you do? Mekanchoi besmartut bekal. You could take a smartut, you could take a rag, take mekanchoi, you could wipe it besmartut with a rag, bekal, gently. So something spilled, you could take a rag and you could gently wipe it away. But you have to do it gently. Veloy bedoichik. You can't firmly go ahead and rub. Why? Says the Mechaber. Pen yischot. Because you might accomplish schita. You might accomplish the malacha of schita, which literally means to wring or to squeeze out moisture from something. Now, this line in the Mechaber needs some biur. It's fascinating to me that the Mishnah Berurah is silent on this line in the Mechaber. The words of the Mechaber mean, again, you could take a smartut, you could take a rag, and you could be mekaneach, you could wipe, bekal, only gently. V'loy b'doichik, not firmly. Why? Pen yischot, because you might do schita. Now, this rag that you're using, is it wet or is it dry? From the words of the Mechaber, it sounds like this rag is dry. The words of the Mechaber are, mekanchoi besmartut, you could wipe it with a rag. He didn't say anything about applying water to the rag. Now, if you're going to apply water to the rag, you got a problem, because now you're introducing water to the equation. Once you introduce water to the equation, now we're going to start worrying about Shriyasai Zui Kibusai. How did you get water on the rag? Water on the rag might be an issue. You have water on the rag, now you put it onto the beged that has a stain, Shriyasai Zui Kibusai. So the easy way to learn the Mechaber is that the Mechaber means you could take a dry rag and you could wipe away the stain. But the Mechaber said you have to do it pakal, you have to do it gently. Why? Because if you do it firmly, you might come to schita. Now, schita means to squeeze moisture out of something. If the rag is dry, where is there schita involved over here? We never introduced water. Where is there schita? So the truth is that this seems to be a machlokes achronim. I'm going to learn, for the purposes of the share, I'm going to follow the pirush of the El Yerabah. The El Yerabah learns that the rag is dry. The schita risk over here is not on the rag. The schita risk is on the beged where the beged is stained. And this goes back to another thing. The Mechaber is telling me over here a case where you have a beged and the beged got dirt on it. And the Mechaber is telling you what you're not allowed to do and what you are allowed to do. First, the Mechaber said what you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to put any water on it. Because by putting water on it, you're doing kibus. Shriyasai Zui Kibusai. You're putting water on the beged, you're soaking the beged, Shriyasai Zui Kibusai, that's it, it's a darais. So you can't put water on it. So that's what you cannot do. Says the Mechaber, what can you do? You could take the rag and you could gently wipe it away. The truth is that this is a halacha that we essentially already learned. Because we learned on Pei Zayin and Beis in Siv Zayin. In Siv Zayin, the Mechaber said, Tit sha'al bigdoi. If you got some mud on your beged, what are you allowed to do? One of the things you're allowed to do, said the Mechaber, was megareroi b'tzipirin. You could fleck it off with your nail. Then the Mechaber said, but you can only do this if it's moist. You can't do it if it's dry. Because if it's dry, you might come to teichen. You might come to grinding. If the mud is dry and now you're going to crumble it up, that's teichen. You're grinding it. So again, in Sif Zayin, the Mechaber told me, you have mud on your beged. You could kind of peel it off with your fingernail if it's wet, if it's still moist. Then we saw in the Mishnah Berurah another caveat to this halacha. And that is, he brought down the Berurah that when is this mutter? It's mutter if even after you take off the tit, there's still going to be an impression of the stain. It's not that you're going to take it off with your fingernail and now the beged is going to be perfectly clean. No, it's that you're going to take the mud, the moist mud off with your finger, and you're going to get rid of the mud, but there's still going to be a stain. And according to the Mishnah Berurah and everything that we learned in Sif Zayin, the explanation of Sif Zayin is, why is it mutter to take your fingernail and kind of peel away that mud? Because it's not real kibbutz. Real kibbutz, according to the Mechaber, requires the introduction of water. To really wash a garment, to do kibbutz, to do laundering, you need water. Without water, that's not called laundering. In Sif Zayin, there's no water. You got some mud on your beged, you want to get rid of it. So you're taking your fingernail, and you're going like this. So real kibbutz daraisa, it can't be. The only issue in Sif Zayin is a risk of an Issa D'Rabbanan. What's the Issa D'Rabbanan? Mechzi kemalaben. It looks like laundering. What the Mechaber tells me in Sif Zayin is, if you do this with your fingernail, that's not an action of laundering. That's not the way you do laundry. You don't do laundry, you don't take your dirty laundry to the laundry room, take your fingernail, and go over all the garments and do this. That's not an act of laundering. Laundering is this. You take things, you rub them together, you get them wet with soap and detergent, and you wring, and you rub, and you agitate. This is not laundering. So in Sif Zayin, what the Mechaber seems to be saying is like this. The reason this is mutter is because, first of all, an Issa D'Oraisa it can't be because there's no water. Second of all, an Issa D'Rabbanan, it's not an act of laundering. This doesn't look like you're doing laundry. Also, another piece, said the Mishnah Berurah from the Berurah, you're not even really accomplishing kibbutz because there's still going to be a stain after you take the mud off. Therefore, the Mechaber says in Sif Zayin, everything at the end of the day, after we finish all the math, this is mutter. Daraisa, it's not. Mechzi kemalabin, it's not. And again, there's two ingredients why it's not mechzi kemalabin. First of all, it's not a mice of kibbutz. This is not how you do laundry. Second of all, you're not accomplishing kibbutz because there's still going to be a stain. Now let's take a look at what we're learning here in Sif Tes. Again, here in Sif Tes, what the Mechaber seems to be telling me is, you got, over here he doesn't use the word tit. Over here he uses the word lichluch. You got dirt on your baghead. Says the Mechaber, I'll tell you what you can't do. You can't put water on it. Because to put water on it would be an Issa D'Oraisa. Shriyasei Zui Kibbusai. So that would be an Issa D'Oraisa. You certainly can't do that. What can you do? You could do something similar to what I told you in Sif Zayin. In Sif Zayin, I told you could take your fingernail and you could do this. Here in Sif Tes, I'm telling you, you could take a cloth and you could wipe it away gently. But the same caveats that applied in Sif Zayin apply over here in Sif Tes. Number one, you could only do this if the dirt that's on the beged is still moist. If the dirt that's on the beged is dry, and by rubbing it like this, you're going to crumble it off, that again would risk teichen. So that you can do. Also, I think that what the Mechaber, that it goes into the words of the Mechaber here, you could only do this if you're not going to remove the stain completely. If you're going to remove the lichluch, you're going to remove the dirt, but there's still going to be the impression of a stain. And therefore, this is mutter, because daraisa, it's not. There's no water. You take the dry cloth. Daraisa, it's not. D'Rabbanan, this is no more an act of laundering than this is. So the same way this is not mechzi kemalaben, this is also not mechzi kemalaben. And the same way by this in Sif Zayin, there's still going to be an impression of a stain. Over here with this in Sif Tes, there's also still going to be an impression of a stain. Therefore, it's mutter. Now we can understand also where there's a risk of schita. Since we have to be talking about a case where the lichluch, the dirt, is still moist, so then you have to make sure that you don't do this bedoichik. Because if you do it bedoichet, you might come to squeeze out some moisture and you might violate the Isser of Schita. That's the way I'm understanding this Mechaber. Spoken over with a few people, and they're in agreement. So that's what I'm going with. That's my understanding of a very deceptively complex line of Mechaber that, interestingly enough, has no Mishnah Berurah. Okay, now, that brings us to Pei Tesam and Aleph and the words of the Ramah. So we're going to take a look at what the Ramah says, and after we see what the Ramah says, we're going to have to kind of take another look at what the Mechaber said until now. So let's take a look. The Mechaber just told us a case. Let's take a look again at the top line of Pei Tesam and Beis. The Mechaber was talking about beged sheyesh alav lichluch. Fabric, a fabric beged that has dirt on it. The Mechaber told me you cannot pour any water on it. Why? Because shriyasai zehu kibusai. Exposing the dirt to water, that equals kibus, and therefore that's it is a daraisa. Says the Ramah, top line, Pei Tesam and Aleph, Haga ubeged she'ein olav lichluch. Let's say you have a beged that has no dirt on it. So now you have a clean beged. Now over here, I'm going to use for a moment the example of a towel. You have a beautiful, clean, freshly laundered towel. No dirt. Beged she'ein olav lichluch. You have something made out of fabric that has no dirt. Mutter loseis alav mayim mu'atim. If you have a reason that you want to put some water on it, you could put a small amount of water onto the towel. So what does that mean? You have a beautiful clean towel, you washed your hands are wet, you could go ahead and you can make the towel wet. Not only that, I'll tell you what's going to turn out to be an even bigger chiddush. If for some reason you want to pour a little water onto the towel, you could pour a little water onto the towel. Clean water, beautiful, clean, pristine, alkaline water. You could take a little water and you could pour a little water onto the towel, but only a small amount of water. V'loy merubim, not a lot of water. Shema yischait. You can't pour a lot of water onto the towel because by creating a towel or a shirt, anything made out of fabric that is very wet, now we're going to risk that you might come to squeeze it out. So what is the Ramah saying here? You have a clean piece of fabric. You could pour water on it, but only a small amount of water. Not a lot of water. Why not a lot of water? Because once you put on a lot of water, we're risking that you might come to schita. What's behind what the Ramah is saying? What's behind what the Ramah is saying is something that we learned in the Chavetz Chaim's beautiful Hakdama. And that is, we learned over there that there's one shita that holds that this rule that the Mechaber just introduced us, that shriyasai zuhi kibusai, that when you soak fabric, that equals washing fabric, that only applies to fabric that has dirt on it. If fabric has dirt on it, then you could say shriyasai, getting the fabric wet, zehu kibusai, that equals laundering the fabric. Because you have a piece of dirty fabric, you pour water on it, the water starts to lift off the stain. But if you have a clean beged, if you have a clean towel, shriyasai zehu kibusai, pouring water on it is laundering it, there's nothing to launder. This is not laundry. This is a clean towel. There's nothing here to launder. There's no dirt to lift off. So this is the shita that holds that you do not say shriyasai zehu kibusai by clean fabric. So thus, says the Ramah, if you have a beged she'ein olav lichluch, if you have a beged that's perfectly clean, mutter loseis alav mayim mu'atim, you could put on a small amount of water because there is no shriyasai zehu kibusai. V'loy berubim, but you can't put on a lot of water. Why? Not because of kibus. The reason you can't put on a lot of water is shema yischait, because we're afraid you might come to do schita. That's the explanation of this Ramah, and let's see this right away inside in the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, ois cotton mem vav, loseis alav mayim. You're allowed to put water on a clean beged. Why, says the Chavetz Chaim? The shriya loy heavy kibus, because soaking cannot be laundering elikishiyesh alav lichluch. Only if you're dealing with fabric that actually has dirt on it. So you have no problem here. Av shriyasei zehu kibusai. Umikamakim asim b'merubim, but it still would be also to put a lot of water on the garment, not because of kibus, only because of the fear that you might come to schita. Okay, now the Mishnah Berurah makes a very important, slightly tangential point, but a very important rule for everything that we're learning. V'dan, you should know, it says the Mishnah Berurah, if you're putting water on a garment for the express purpose of washing it, then even a small amount of water is aser. In other words, the Ramah just said, you have a clean beged, and you want to pour water on it, gesundheit. You have a beautiful clean towel, you want to pour water on it, gesundheit. There's no kibbutz. We don't say shriyasai zui kibbuzai. It's not dirty, no problem. Says the Mishnah Berurah, hold it a minute. What if you want to clean it? The whole reason you're pouring water on it is because you want to clean it. Now you'll ask me, what does that mean you want to clean it? You just said it's dirty. I don't know. Maybe you think it has an odor. I don't know. I can't answer you that. But that's what the Mishnah Berurah is saying. The Mishnah Berurah is saying, if you're pouring water onto this baguette, onto this piece of fabric, for the express purpose of washing it, so then, I feel b'mayim mu'atan aser, then the issur of kibbutz is going to come back. If you're doing it for kibbutz, it is kibbutz. Kain muchach behedyu b'sefer HaTorah. Chavetz Chaim says this is clear from the Sefer HaTorah. V'chein mashpa gamke b'smag achakach matzasi shekei kasab el yerabah b'simin shin aleph sifkat nayin zayin. Okay, ois kat mem zayin v'loy merubim. But you can't pour a significant amount of water onto a clean baguette. But why? Because of the risk of schita. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'imu davar she'ein makbid al meimav u'manichai kamez manim amayim. But since over here the only issur is schita, right? We're going now according to the opinion that to pour water on a clean baguette is fine. We don't say shriyasai zui kibbuzai. The only reason we're saying you're not allowed to put on mayim merubim is because of the risk that you might come to schita. But what if it's something that you don't care if it's soaking wet? There's absolutely no reason that you would want to wring it out. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if it's a davar she'ein makbid al meimav v'manichai kamez manim amayim, if it's something that you often would leave soaking wet and you have no interest in wringing it out, there would be no concern that you might come to schita. Siman shin aleph sif mem vav. Now, let's give an example of this. Okay, you're in the kitchen, Shabbos afternoon. You take out a pitcher of water from the refrigerator, and you put it down on the kitchen counter. You turn around, you knock off the pitcher. You just got a whole pitcher full of water on the kitchen floor. You run to the laundry room and you take out a pristine, freshly laundered towel. Okay, so now you're going to take the towel, you're going to put it on the floor, and you're going to get it soaking wet. You're going to soak up a whole pitcher full of water. Is there a problem here? According to this man Diyamar, is there a problem here? No. What's the problem? We're not going to say shriyasai zui kibbuzai because the towel's clean. So there's no stain. So there's no shriyasai zui kibbuzai. Are we going to worry shema yischait? I don't think so. You're talking about a towel. We get towels soaking wet. When we get towels soaking wet, do we run right away to wring them out? Not necessarily. If you have a place to put it, you have a slop sink that you can throw it into. Well, not necessarily. I think I believe most poskim say that on towels, we don't have, especially shmatas and this and that, we don't have a hakpada that we say shema yischait. We don't think people are makpid on having it wet. So there's no concern of schita. There's no concern of kibbutz. No problem. So that would be a practical example according to this shita. Now, I told you that after we see this, well, you know what, let's go weiter in the Ramah first. So that was the first opinion brought down by the Ramah. In the parentheses here, he says he brings this from the Beis Yosef in the name of the Smag and the Smak and the Sefer HaTorah and the Rush. Now let's go weiter. Second line, Pei Tesam Aleph near the end of the line, right by the Ois Katan Mem Ches for the Mishnah Berurah. Now the Ramah brings down a more stringent opinion. V'yesh oisrim b'chol inyan. But there are those who disagree, and they say that it's usher to put water onto this beged. Which beged? A beged that's clean. Now, v'yesh oisrim b'chol inyan. There are those that say it's usher under any circumstances. What does the word b'chol inyan mean? The word b'chol inyan means there are those that say that it's usher to put water on a garment, whether the garment is dirty, like the Mechaber said, The Mechaber said, you have a beged that has lichluch, a beged that's dirty, you're not allowed to put water on it. Because Shriyasai Zehu Kibusai. The Ramah, in the first opinion, said, if you have a beged that's not dirty, you could put water on it. Says this Numan Diamar, V'yechaiser B'chol Inyan. There are those that say it's also to put water on the garment, whether the garment is dirty, the Mechaber's case, or the garment is not dirty, the Ramah's case. Either way, it's also to put water on the garment. Also, it's also to put water on the garment, whether it's mayim muatim. The Ramah said mayim muatim on a beged that's not dirty, you could put on. This man Yarma says, I don't care if it's mayim muatim, I don't care if it's mayim merubim. You're not allowed to put water on it. So this is a much more stringent man Yamar. V'yesh oisra b'chol inyan. What's behind this man Yamar? So what's behind this man Yamar is also something that we learned in the Mishnah Berurah's Hakdama. In the Mishnah Berurah's Hakdama, the Mishnah Berurah brought down a second opinion. The second opinion said, the rule of Shriyasan Zui Kibusan, soaking is akin to laundering, applies even to a beged that's not dirty. The first man Yarma says, Shriyasan Zeu Kibusan is only by a dirty garment, like the Mechaber's case. A clean garment, you're going to tell me that soaking a clean garment is laundering? How can it be laundering? There's no dirt. The second opinion here in the Ramah says, no, Shriyasai Zeu Kibusai applies even to a clean garment. So you talk, even a clean garment you can't put water on. And you can't put even mayim muatim, even a small amount of water, you can't put on. Why? Because Shriyasai Zeu Kibusai. Forget mayim merubim. Mayim merubim, you have a new problem, you have a schita problem. But even mayim muatim, Shriyasai Zeu Kibusai, you can't put water on it. Let's see this in the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah's Kat Mem Ches, V'yesh oisrin. Says the Mishnah Berurah what I just told you. Sevira lahu, these opinions hold. Demad amrinan shriyasan zeu kibusan. When we say the rule of shriyasan zeu kibusan, hu afilu bebeged she'ein alav lichluch. That's even by a beged that is not dirty. V'lachein, and therefore, since we're going to apply the rule of Shriyasan Zeu Kibusan, afilu b'muatin aser mishum kibus, even to put a small amount of water is going to be forbidden because it rises to the level of kibus. Now, if we pause here for a second, I'll ask you the following question. So it's Shabbos. You have a beautiful, clean, freshly laundered towel, and it's hanging on your towel rack in the kitchen. Now you go and you wash your hands. Maybe you even wash your face. So your face is dirty. You're not washing your face in the kitchen. You're washing your face in the bathroom. So you have a freshly beautiful laundered towel in the bathroom. You went, you washed your hands, you washed your face. Now you take a beautiful clean towel and you dry your face and you dry your hands. Uh-oh. You just, according to the first Mandi Amar, you don't have a problem. You don't say Shriyasa Zeu Kibusan because it's a clean towel. But according to the second Mandi Amar, what do you mean? Shriyasa Zeu Kibusan is even by a clean towel. I just made a clean towel wet. Why don't I have a problem of kibus? The answer is because of what the Mishnah Berurah is about to say right now. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Umikol Mokai, nevertheless, you must understand, Im Nesinas Mayim ala Beged, if when you put the water on the Beged, if when you get the beged wet, it's derech lichluch, you do it in a way that's going to make the towel dirty. So the case that I just gave you, you wash your face. Now you're not putting clean water on the towel, right? You're putting dirty water on the towel. Now you'll tell me, Rabbi Weiss, what if my face is very clean? So now the water that's coming off my face is not really dirty. Now that's called dirty water. That's wastewater. How do you think a towel gets dirty, right? Why do you launder your towels? You launder your towels because you dry your face off, you dry your hands off. Soil of it comes off your hands, off your face, gets on the towel, right? Doesn't happen in 30 seconds. Doesn't happen maybe in one wash. But this is called derech lichluch. This is not the way you launder a towel. You don't launder a towel by wiping off your face and wiping off your hands. This is derech lichluch. This is the way you make a towel dirty. So we come mokim im nesiras mayim ala beged derech lichluch shari. Then even according to this Mandi Amar, even according to the machmir Mandi Amar, that says that shriyasai zeu kibusai applies to a clean garment, not if it's derech lichluch, not if it's getting the towel dirty. then it's mutter, then shari. And the Mishnah Berurah says that we should be chayshish for this more stringent opinion since we're dealing with daraisis. So now, let's say the case that I gave you before. You poured a pitcher of water on the floor. Well, it turns out that if you poured a pitcher of water on the kitchen floor and you want to wipe it up with a clean towel, that's going to be mutter according to both of these opinions. According to the first opinion, it's going to be mutter because you're dealing with a clean towel. So we're not going to say shriyasai zehu kibusai. According to the second opinion, it's also going to be mutter. You know why? Because even though you say shriyasai zehu kibusai on a clean towel, but this is derech lichluch, wiping up water, even though it's clean drinking water that just came out of the refrigerator, once it spills on the floor and you go to wipe up a spill, that's derech lichluch. Since it's derech lichluch, it's going to be mutter. Now, where would there be a nafkamina between the first opinion and the second opinion? So I'll tell you an interesting case where there might be a nafkamina between these two opinions. And that would be, let's say you have a chayla, somebody who has maybe an inflammation or an infection or something, and he needs a hot compress. So you want to take a clean washcloth and you want to wet it in hot water so you can make a hot compress to put a hot compress on something. Now, of course, you're going to have to deal with shilas of refuah. That's not for Siman Shin Beis. There's going to be shilas of refuah that we have to deal with. There are going to be shilas of bishul that you have to deal with. Where exactly are you getting the hot water from and how are you using the hot water? Also not the place for Shin Beis. But let's say you have a situation where everything is all set up. You're allowed to do the refuah. There's no bishul shaila over here. But what you want to do is you want to take a clean washcloth or a clean fabric gauze pad. I'm not going to get into paper. Paper is a machlokes hapaiskim, famous tshuva in Yigros Moshe, fabric. And you want to put it into hot water in order to make a hot compress, but the water's clean. So now you're applying water to clean fabric, and you're not doing it derech lichluch. You might get it dirty when you put it on the skin to make it to use it as a hot compress. But when you're getting the fabric wet, you're not getting it wet derech lichluch. You're taking a nice pristine glass bowl full of hot water. You're taking a nice clean fabric and you're dipping it into nice clean hot water. That's not derech lichluch. According to the first opinion in the Ramah, not a problem. It's clean. So we don't say shriyasai zehu kibusai. Certainly not a deraisa. There's no deraisa over here. Now, that might be called mayim merubim, and now you might have a schita question, but the gzeira mishum schita is only the rabbanon. We're talking about a chayla. There might be room over there. To take away the problem of gzeira shema yischait. Now you're going to have to be careful not to actually do schita, because schita is a deraisa. So you're going to have to be careful not to perform actually schita. But according to the first man yamar, it would seem that you wouldn't have a problem. According to the second man yamar, you do have a problem. Because how do you soak the fabric, the clean fabric, in the water? Shriyasai zehu kibusai, that would be an issa daraisa. Unless what you do is you make the water dirty. Now you have to figure out how to make the water dirty. So you're talking about a chayla. We're going to relax Yisurei D'Rabbanan. Dirt is muktzah. Take a little dirt, put a little dirt into the water. Now the water is dirty. The water is dirty. So now when you dip the fabric in, it's derech lichluch. So these are some places in my mind where the nafkamina between the two are going to come out. Now, there's another interesting place where the nafkamina is going to come out over here. And that is, you'll ask me a question like this. You have let's think about this a second. Okay, you'll ask me a shaila like this. You put out a towel Shabbos morning in the kitchen, right? Comes time for the Shabbos Suda. You have 10 people by your Shabbos Suda. 10 people go ahead, wash the tilas yadayim, and they use the towel. So this towel has already been used by 10 people. Now another person wants to come wash his hands and use the towel. At this point, are you going to say that the towel is dirty? And now when the towel is dirty, you're going to say shriyasai zehu kibusai on the towel? No. That's not called a dirty towel. That's called a used towel. A dirty towel is there's dirt on it. There's stains on it. That's a dirty towel. Towel that 10 people with clean hands washed until it's yadayim is not a dirty towel. It's a used towel, but it's not a dirty towel. Now, we just have a few minutes, so I'm just going to pose an interesting question, and we'll see it in the Biur Halacha. If you follow the paper trail over here of the Mechaber and the Ramah, so the Mechaber came, and the Mechaber gave us a case on Peches Amid Beis, how we started this year. You have a beged that is dirty. Said the Mechaber, you have a beged sheyesh alav lichluch, you have a beged that is dirty, you're not allowed to put water on it, because shriyasai zeu kibusai. Okay, how about a beged that doesn't have dirt on it? The Mechaber didn't discuss a beged that doesn't have dirt on it. Comes along the Ramah, and the Ramah says, how about a beged that doesn't have dirt on it? Oh, a beged that doesn't have dirt on it, you're allowed to put on a small amount of water. Why? Because we don't say shriyasai zeu kibusai, because it's a clean beged. You can only use a little water because you can't use a lot of water because of schita. Then the Ramah brings down a more stringent opinion. Fine. But what does the Mechaber hold? What does the Mechaber hold about a beged she'ein olav lichluch? About a beged that has no dirt? The Mechaber didn't speak about it. The mashmois, the implication of the Mechaber, is that the Mechaber agrees with the first opinion of the Ramah. Because otherwise, the Mechaber should have said something. Right? The implication is that what the Mechaber is saying is, a beged sheyesh alav lichluch, a beged that is dirty, you have a problem. Shriyasai zeu kibusai. And then he's silent. So it sounds like a beged that's not dirty. We don't say shriyasai zeu kibusai. That would be the first opinion of the Ramah. Says the Biur Halacha at Peches Amid Beis, near the bottom, Dibur Amaschel sheyesh alav lichluch. Says the Chavetz Chaim, mipashta the lishna, from the way the Mechaber writes it, mashma, the implication is, the soiver kedeya harishayna hamuva b'Ramah. It sounds like the Mechaber agrees with the first opinion of the Ramah, that by clean fabric, we do not say shriyasai zeu kibusai. Right? Sounds like the Mechaber agrees with the Ramah. Okay. Then the Biur Halacha says, the Magen Avraham Taki says that way, but he says the Tosefes Shabbos, the Biur Hagra, they sound like the Mechaber holds like the second opinion in the Ramah. But then if you go to Peches Amid Aleph, a few lines down in this Biur Halacha, the Chavetz Chaim says, V'hinei ledina. When it comes halacha lamaisa, Ayin beBiur Hagra shekasavu writes, the hanachain kedei rishayna, that really the halacha should follow the first opinion of the Ramah, that you do not say shriyasai zeu kibusai by clean garments, im einu miskaven likvisa, so long as you don't have kavana to do kibus. Remember what the Mishnah Berurah said, if your intent is to launder the garment, it's aser. Ubli El Yerabba mashpagam kein shedas rov rishonim kadei rishayna. The El Yerabba says most rishonim follow the first opinion. Mikol Makom, nevertheless, says the Chavetz Chaim, Kevin sheyesh kami rishonim shemachmirin bazeh, since we have a lot of rishonim that are machmir over here, v'cheinu das HaTorah b'siman shin yotes b'siman shin lamedalit l'fi ma shebiura b'is Yosef bevada yesh lachu shalahachmir b'isur Torah. Since we're dealing here with potential daraisis, we should be machmir v'chein mashba be'el yezuta v'oid achreinim, and that's why the Mishnah Berurah said that halacha l'maisa we should be chayshish for the second opinion here in the Ramah, that shriyasai zeu kibusai even applies to clean garments, which would mean that to have, if you're wearing a clean shirt and you want to put some water on it for some reason, that would be a problem. And what we're going to see in the next year, we're going to see that the Chavetz Chaim is going to say that, like, if you're doing something to wash off a baby or something on Shabbos, you should be careful not to get your begadim wet, because even if your beged is clean, right? Says we're going to be chayshish over here for the more machmer opinion that shriyasai zehu kibusai, that getting clean garments wet can rise to the level of kibus. Now, somebody might be listening to this and saying, "How are you allowed to walk outside in the rain? How are you allowed to step into a puddle?" Right? So we're going to see the poskim say that over there is zikr not an issue, davar she'ein miskaven, etc., etc. Whatever it is, I just wanted to throw it out and let you know that that is not an issue. And I'll try to cover a few more cases of halacha l'maisa. In the next year, we're going to be talking about specific cases where the shilos of halacha l'maisa are going to come up. So Mitzvah Hashem will continue to expand upon what we've learned. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Discuss of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rabban Shem should send Yeshua's first parnassus should do come to those in need. We should be zeichet to see the B'yas Kol Tzedek. B'mherav Yameinu Amen. Be well.